5 key pension news items. Like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay informed about the latest pension news. Let's start with the 5th news item. IFS alert. Pensioners may foot the bill for Labor's tax reduction plans. The Institute for Fiscal Studies, IFS, has cautioned that pensioners may suffer financial setbacks if Labor goes ahead with its plan to reduce taxes for working individuals. Paul Johnson, the director of the IFS, explained that the party would need to compensate for the tax cut by increasing taxes elsewhere, such as slashing tax relief on pension contributions. This alteration would limit workers' ability to save tax-free funds in their pension pots. The IFS also discovered that Labor's proposal to raise council tax bills for owners of more valuable homes would adversely impact many pensioners who often reside in larger, more valuable properties. Furthermore, the party is considering tightening inheritance tax rules, making it more challenging for the elderly to leave money to their families without incurring a levy. Mr. Johnson highlighted various options for Labor, including implementing higher council taxes on expensive properties, reforming capital gains tax, and closing inheritance tax loopholes. The idea of cutting income tax or national insurance may be included in Labor's election manifesto, as mentioned by Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves. However, Mr. Johnson cautioned that without raising taxes, Labor would struggle to balance the national budget. The Chancellor currently has limited fiscal flexibility, and public services are already strained, leaving no room for spending cuts. He clarified that any tax cuts proposed by Labor would likely be offset by larger tax increases, and it is unlikely that they will result in a net tax cut. Labor previously discussed raising taxes on private schools and non-DOMs, but these changes alone won't generate sufficient funds to cover income tax or national insurance reductions. According to HM Revenue and Customs, HMRC, a 2p cut to the basic rate of income tax would lead to a £14 billion cost to the Treasury in 2025-26. In contrast, the IFS's modeling suggests that reducing relief on pension contributions to the level of basic income tax could generate an additional £15 billion for the Treasury. However, reducing pension contributions risks adversely affecting the retirement savings of millions of workers. If Labor were to announce income tax cuts without ensuring budget balance, they could encounter a situation similar to the controversial Liz Truss mini-budget in September 2022. Following an unexpected inflation surge increasing interest rate expectations, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves scaled back plans to borrow £28 billion for net zero investments. Reflecting on the autumn statement, Ms. Reeves emphasized Labor's commitment to economic and fiscal responsibility. Labor leader Sir Keir Starmer also stated that the party would avoid swiftly increasing spending due to the nation's financial condition. Mr. Johnson explained that the room for public spending cuts is significantly narrower compared to 2010, when Chancellor George Osborne reduced state spending to address the deficit. As such, attempting similar cuts now is unlikely. In Jeremy Hunt's autumn statement, it was revealed that Britain's public services are already set to experience real terms funding cuts. Embracing danger. My strategy for high-risk pension investments explained. Once upon a time, back in the 1670s during the era of King Charles II, the UK witnessed its first organized pension scheme for Royal Navy officers. Fast forward to the present day, and many people would struggle to explain why the country is generally hesitant to take more risks with their pension investments. The concept of risk-return trade-off is a classic principle in investing. It suggests that the higher the risk, the higher the potential reward. However, the UK is currently grappling with two major issues: limited savings for pensions and a reduced appetite for risk when it comes to allocating pension investments. Having worked as a trader for investment banks and as a chartered accountant, I was able to build a substantial pension fund in my 20s. This was made possible by maximizing my personal contributions and taking advantage of the firm's matching contribution scheme. However, it's important to note that these were defined contribution pension schemes, meaning the final output depended on the fund's investment performance and the choices I made at the time of retirement. In my 30s, I decided to change careers and became a teacher. Despite the lower average salary for teachers compared to other professions, the teacher's pension scheme is quite generous. Our schools contribute a remarkable 23.6% of our pay towards the cost of benefits, ensuring we receive an index-linked government-backed annual pension based on our average career earnings. This defined benefit pension scheme provides a guaranteed income for life, offering peace of mind for those in the teaching profession. However, there is still the question of my separate private pension pot, which falls under the defined contribution category. With several decades until my scheduled retirement, I have chosen a high-risk investment strategy. This includes allocating my pension investments to riskier emerging markets, speculative asset classes, and individual volatile stocks like Apple, Tesla, and Google. I understand that I have the capacity to handle potential losses and withstand the ups and downs of international markets given the long time horizon. A recent report from the Institute for Fiscal Studies revealed that 7 in 8 working individuals in the UK are not saving an appropriate amount for their pensions. This means they are saving less than 15% of their earnings, which Lord Turner's Pensions Commission deemed appropriate. Moreover, nearly 1/5 of private sector employees and less than 1/5 of self-employed individuals are not saving for their pensions at all. There seems to be a prevailing cynicism surrounding pension savings, stemming from a fundamental misunderstanding of their purpose. In reality, pension plans serve as long-term savings accounts, yet many of us have neglected to invest adequately in our own future. This is a concerning trend that could lead to a national demographic pensions time bomb. While there is undoubtedly a need for governmental initiatives to change our societal attitudes towards pension savings, we must also examine our own handling of existing pension funds. With persistently high inflation eroding the real value of savings, and the state pension often falling short of maintaining pre-retirement standards of living, it becomes crucial for individuals to consider taking measured risks. Ultimately, the goal of a pension is to provide us with enough money to live the life we desire during retirement. The right combination of different types of investments can help navigate market fluctuations and steadily grow pension funds. It's essential to understand that pensions, as tax-efficient savings options, are not inherently risky. The risk lies in the investment choices made. Even those approaching retirement age may have room to take on some risk. Many opt for lifestyle funds that invest in lower-risk options, like cash. However, for those seeking exposure to market upsides and downsides, delving into the world of individual equity selection is not always necessary. Tracker funds come to the rescue in such cases. These passive or index funds simply follow the overall performance of a particular market or index. For individuals looking to add a touch of risk to their pensions, global tracker funds like Fidelity Index World or U.S. equity funds like Legal & General U.S. Index can offer a taste of market exposure. While there is always the specter of negative performance looming over investments, markets also provide opportunities for pension investments to outpace inflation and potentially deliver additional gains. Risk is not always the enemy. Sometimes it can be the key to unlocking greater long-term rewards. New tax threat looms for victims of pension scams. Once upon a time, there was a man named Jeremy Cornford who found himself in a predicament due to a seemingly reasonable decision he made. Back in 2011, acting upon the advice of a colleague and a registered financial advisor, Cornford, who worked as an insurance broker at the time, decided to move his retirement savings of £96,000. He believed that transferring it to the Portman pension scheme, part of a group of funds known as the ARC funds, would yield better investment returns. The fact that the funds were associated with Stephen Ward, a former pensions legislation advisor to the government, impressed Cornford. Moreover, he was ensured by the financial advisor that the scheme had no potential tax implications. Little did Cornford know that over a decade later, he and several thousand others who had invested in similar schemes would face a new wave of financial devastation. Many victims of these different schemes, which were predominantly active from 2006 to 2014, have received hefty tax bills, ranging from tens of thousands to potentially more than the entire sum they invested. The total amount in question is projected to reach tens of millions of pounds. In November, members of Parliament and peers in the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Investment Fraud denounced the UK's tax authority, Revenue and Customs, HMRC, for its treatment of the victims. They claimed that instead of holding the scheme promoters accountable, HMRC was persecuting victims. The victims argue that the organizers of these complex schemes misled them by insisting the transfers had no tax implications. Typically, the schemes lent a portion of the invested funds to other investors and utilized the rest to invest in volatile and illiquid assets. Some schemes even invested in assets like Brazilian forestry land and parking spaces in Dubai. As victims shared their stories with the Financial Times, it became apparent that they had lost their entire investments, save for any amounts they received back as loans. Cornford harshly criticizes HMRC's pursuit of him and other participants, labeling it a national disgrace. He has already paid £30,000 in tax, but a tax tribunal ruling in March has opened the door for HMRC to seek even higher sums from him and others affected. Caught in financial limbo, Cornford confesses that he is unable to commit to anything due to the looming bill. Another victim, Sue Flood, faces a staggering bill of £126,000 or more after transferring £230,000 from her BBC pension and her partner's private pension to the ARC scheme. A letter from Dalriada trustees, the current fund manager, warned participants that they could be taxed on the entirety of their transfers or potentially more. The tax bill comprises 40% of the deemed taxable sum plus a 15% penalty surcharge. Dalriada took charge of the funds in 2011 under the oversight of the pensions regulator, concerned about the questionable operations. In addition to the tax charges, Flood and her partner could face an 8% interest charge per year since their 2011 transfer. HMRC and Dalriada are still determining the participants' overall liabilities. Feeling frustrated, Flood, who actively participated in the inquiry on the matter by the APPG, states that she made significant efforts to verify ARC's credibility before investing. She even attempted to halt the transfer while it was in progress. HMRC rebuts the notion that its tax bills aim to recover losses caused by misconduct, emphasizing that it is within its rights to tax unauthorized early transfers from pension funds. They acknowledge the victims' financial losses, but claim that their duty is to tax amounts released from pensions that contravene the law. These so-called pension liberation schemes were peddled as legitimate and tax-free means for savers to access a portion of their pension funds before reaching 55 years of age. Some participants joined these schemes, enticed by the promise of superior investment returns. Successive governments encouraged pension savers to consider transferring their funds, leading to hundreds of schemes eventually gaining formal registration as pension funds with HMRC. This registration instilled a sense of legitimacy in those who ultimately lost their savings. Flood maintains a database that reveals several thousand participants, with assets worth at least £100 million transferred across the various schemes. Almost all of the schemes violated standard pension regulations. In the case of the ARC funds, the pensions regulator transferred management to Dalriada in 2011 due to irregular transfers made from the funds to a high street travel agent and an unregistered company in Cyprus. Stephen Ward, who introduced many members to the ARC schemes, faced a ban in 2016 from serving as a pension fund trustee due to severe misconduct and capability failures. Despite living in Spain, Ward provided no response to inquiries directed at him through the social media platform, X. Margaret Snowden, chair of the Pension Scams Industry Group, which actively combats malpractice, points out that the tax bills issued so far primarily relate to the sums paid out by the schemes to the victims. For instance, Cornford's £30,000 bill resulted from a £43,000 payment he received from ARC. The tax bill consisted of £24,000 in taxes and £6,000 in interest. According to Snowden, the law permits HMRC to demand such sums. Nevertheless, she vehemently opposes the authorities' approach, deeming it tragic to go after those involved in relatively small amounts rather than pursuing the scammers and seizing their assets to compensate for the tax losses. One individual, referred to as Andrew to protect their identity, experienced such a bill after transferring their pension fund of £174,000 from their employer to a scheme known as Salmon Enterprises. In return, Andrew received a loan of £140,000. HMRC issued a bill of £89,000 for that loan, while the money invested in the scheme vanished. Andrew had to rely on family loans to settle the bill after investing the loan in an unsuccessful property venture. Andrew is particularly incensed because the pensions regulator had already banned Tudor Capital Management, trustees of the Salmon Scheme, from managing pensions, citing suspicions of criminal activities. However, Andrew's previous pension provider failed to detect the ban and proceeded with the transfer. Andrew expresses frustration, stating that victims are being treated as if they perpetrated fraud. Innocently, they had no intention of defrauding anyone or evading taxes. While HMRC maintains that it is not taxing money lost due to misconduct, individuals who invested in the ARC schemes have received letters from Dalriada advising them that they could potentially face even larger tax bills than those already taxed. These letters, a direct result of the March Tax Tribunal ruling, left Flood bewildered, as the final tax bill is still pending calculation due to its complexity. Cornford frets over the possibility of facing a 55% tax on the remaining £96,000 he invested, or potentially an even higher amount, compounded by interest. The situation faced by the victims deeply troubles Sir Stephen Timms, the Labour MP, who chairs the UK House of Commons Work and Pensions Committee. Timms supports the work of the Investment Fraud APG and insists that HMRC needs to exercise discretion when handling these cases, instead of demanding 55% of the initial amount. Nonetheless, the prevailing sentiment suggests that HMRC remains steadfast in its obligation to recover owed taxes in the ARC cases. Cornford describes the situation as a constant sword of Damocles hanging over him, adding that the bill will eventually arrive and must be paid. Snowdon believes it is inherently unjust for individuals who were merely seeking the best retirement outcome to find themselves in such predicaments. 2024, the dawn of a new era for UK pensions. What to expect? In the year 2024, significant changes are on the horizon for UK pensions, promising to bring about transformative effects for individuals planning their retirement. One of the most notable changes will be the state pensions increase of 8.5% in April, as part of the Triple Lock Promise. This surge will raise the full new state pension to £221.20 per week, and the basic state pension to £169.50 per week. Another sweeping change set to occur is the abolition of the Pension Lifetime Allowance, LTA, starting in April 2024. Currently set at £1,073,100, the LTA acts as a cap on the maximum amount one can accumulate in pension savings before incurring additional tax charges. The removal of this allowance will particularly benefit those with substantial pension pots. However, implementing this change effectively requires maneuvering through a complex web of intricate rules. Adding a further element of uncertainty is the possibility that the Labour Party, if they were to come into power, might reinstate the LTA. Additionally, the government has announced plans to consult on a scheme called Pension Pot for Life, which would enable workers to maintain a single pension pot while transitioning between different jobs. However, the timeline for implementing this scheme remains unclear. Auto-enrollment will also witness changes, as the eligibility age is lowered from 22 to 18 and the lower earnings limit for pension contributions is removed. These modifications are expected to benefit women and part-time workers, although the exact timeline for their implementation remains uncertain. Moreover, the deadline for purchasing voluntary national insurance contributions has been extended to April 5, 2025, alongside plans to establish an online platform to streamline the process. These upcoming changes reflect a broader shift in the UK's financial landscape, driven by the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt. With a focus on equity investment and secondary market reforms, Hunt outlined plans to invigorate the IPO, initial public offering, market, restructure pension scheme investment, and support the retail market. As part of these initiatives, A £250 million investment under the Long-Term Investment for Technology and Science initiative aims to encourage pension funds to invest in UK science and technology companies. As the UK prepares for these changes, it is clear that the year ahead will be profoundly significant for the nation's pension landscape, ultimately reshaping the retirement plans of millions. Revamping UK pensions. Significant shifts in lifetime allowance approaching. In a plot twist revealed by the autumn statement, it was announced that the lifetime allowance, LTA, for pensions will be eliminated starting from the 6th of April 2024, referred to as LDAY. These tax changes have been outlined in the Finance Bill, a hefty document with an astounding 100 pages dedicated to pensions out of a total of 252. The new legislation is undeniably complex, posing challenges for practitioners. One particularly perplexing aspect is that certain terms, relevant lump sum and relevant benefit crystallization event, have different meanings depending on the specific tax allowance under consideration. In an attempt to provide clarity, HMRC issued guidelines on 20 December. Here we delve into the key areas impacted by these changes, offering our insights. Pensions. No capital limit. Under the new rules, pensions received from a registered pension scheme, whether in the form of a scheme pension, income drawdown, or through an annuity, will only be subjected to income tax at the recipient's marginal rate. The burden of calculating a new pension's deemed capital value against the old lifetime allowance, LTA, or applying additional taxes, such as the LTA charge for exceeding a certain threshold, will be lifted. This differs from the current LTA regime and benefit crystallization events, BCEs, which consider both the relevant lump sums paid to a member and the capitalized value of their new pension entitlement. Previously, if a member had depleted their LTA, any excess pension was subject to a 25% LTA charge in addition to marginal rate income tax. Under the new tax system, HMRC will focus on recording and taxing lump sums that surpass the new lump sum allowances. New tax-free lump sum allowances. The pension landscape will need to adjust to two fresh tax allowances. One, the lump sum allowance, LSA, of £268,275. Two, the lump sum and death benefit allowance, LSDBA, of £173,100. Notably, the LSDBA matches the current standard lifetime allowance, LTA, while the LSA represents 25% of the LSDBA. Individuals, LSAs will be reduced by the cumulative amount of any prior pension commencement lump sum, PCLS, and the tax-free portion of uncrystallized funds pension lump sums, UFPLS, they have received. Lump sums exceeding an individual's LSA will be taxed according to their marginal income tax rate. Furthermore, a member's LSDBA will be diminished by any earlier PCLS, UFPLS, serious ill health lump sum, or the value of any authorized death benefit, other than trivial commutation or charity death benefit lump sum, relating to the member. Pension commencement lump sum, PCLS. The tax-free PCLS can still be received under the same conditions as present. It is limited to 25% of the total value crystallized and can only be paid when a member becomes entitled to a relevant pension, like a scheme pension, annuity, or designated DC funds for drawdown. Members must have sufficient LSA and LSDBA coverage to accommodate the PCLS, restricting the total sum of their PCLSs, including tax-free UFPLSs, to £268,275. Pension commencement excess lump sum. A new category of authorized lump sum called a PCLs will replace the current lifetime allowance excess lump sum. Wherever possible, references to an LTALS in scheme rules will be interpreted as a PCLs. While the PCLs and LS share some similarities, there are notable distinctions. A PCLs can only be paid when a member has fully utilized their LSDBA, set at £1,073,100, equivalent to the existing standard LTA. This means a member can only receive a PCLs once they have already taken benefits equivalent to the LTA value. However, a PCLs can only be paid in conjunction with a member becoming entitled to a relevant pension and must not exceed roughly 4 times the amount of that pension. In contrast, prior to April 2024, an LTALs could be paid entirely in lump sum form, even if the member had exceeded their LTA, without requiring any connected pension to be in payment simultaneously. It remains unclear whether the necessity for a connected pension serves as the policy intention behind the PCLs. Notably, the P-Cells legislation is new and has not undergone scrutiny by the pension industry. Although the provisions for P-Cells address the loophole identified by the industry concerning near full defined benefit (DB) commutation, they introduce a new anomaly. Transitional provisions, valuing previous BCEs. Pension reform rarely commences from a clean slate. In this case, the challenge lies in accounting for pension and lump sum benefits that were already in payment prior to L-Day during previous benefit crystallization events, BCEs. Two specific challenges arise. 1. Old-style BCE statements typically show the percentage of the LTA consumed when a BCE was triggered. However, from 6 April 2024 onwards, the focus will shift to the actual amount rather than the percentage of a lump sum. 2. Pre-L-Day statements outlining a member's LTA usage consider both lump sum and pension values. With the new lump sum allowances in effect, only lump sums or their tax-free portions will be taken into account. Transitional provisions are outlined to address the pre-L-Day BCEs. Interestingly, these provisions will be housed within a schedule of the Finance Act 2024 itself, rather than being added as supplementary provisions in existing legislation. Two alternative methods exist to determine how much LSA a person has utilized through pre-L-Day BCEs. 1. The default method deducts 25% of the aggregate value crystallized by these BCEs, adjusted to reflect historical LTA level changes. This method assumes that 25% of the crystallized value was taken as a tax-free lump sum, typically a PCLS or the tax-free portion of a UFPLS. 2. The real data method comes into play if a member possesses a transitional tax-free amount certificate. This certificate, when in force, shows the total tax-free lump sums taken under the pre-2024 regime, replacing the figure derived from the default calculation. This method can be helpful if a member previously became entitled to a defined benefit (DB) scheme pension but decided against commuting it for a tax-free lump sum. Members can request a transitional tax-free amount certificate from any registered pension scheme they are associated with. To obtain the certificate, members must provide complete evidence of previous lump sums received. Scheme administrators have 3 months to issue the certificate or reject the application. The practical aspects of obtaining such a certificate, especially when it involves a different scheme from the one that disbursed the lump sum, will be addressed in due course.